Here we go. Okay, April 28th, 2022. How are you, Julie?
I'm just dandy. How are you?
Good. We're in Taurus season. We're in your season.
It's Taurus. I know. It's my favorite month, I guess.
Well, it should be. I realized just recently, last year, how beautiful. It's fun when you know the zodiac and you know how each sign is expressed through the nature of the season that it's in.
Oh, for sure.
And so
I love walking around and saying hello to the plants. Oh, a little tulip. Oh, hello, how are you?
they're
Nice
so cute. I know. My daughter was complaining about, I think it was last week, about, as we all were, about the rain, the cold rain, and April. And I said, "Oh, I have a little secret to show you. Come here." And I said, "You see what's happening? You see that on the trees, there's these little bulbs that you can hardly see, but they're there."
Yeah, yeah.
This is the secret of, of Aries season coming into Taurus. They're
awesome.
there. They're ready to come out to blossom. And then when they all blossom in May, they're just so gorgeous.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a great season.
Yes. So today, we're going to talk about the new moon in Taurus, and the new moon, is that right? New moon in Taurus?
Yes, eclipse.
Yeah. And the eclipse, two eclipses or one eclipse?
Yeah, the new moon, it's like eclipse season, they call it now. So that means the nodes are in Taurus and Scorpio, and the eclipses will be in Taurus and Scorpio. So we have a new moon eclipse on Saturday in Taurus. It's a partial eclipse, but it's an eclipse. And then we have a full moon one on May 16th.
Okay. And what wisdom do we have to glean from those new moon, full moon eclipses in Taurus and Scorpio?
Well, Taurus is about what you got. It has to do with stuff and matter and all beauty, all that stuff. But it has a shadow side. It has a very shadowy side, which is mine. Like I want more land.
Mm-hmm.
I control the oil.
Right.
So
possessiveness.
Mm-hmm. And it's fixed, so it's power oriented. So for us mere mortals, it's really a time to appreciate the world coming back to life. But it's also about things like supply chains and the financial world and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So we can expect themes to do with that type of thing.
Well, we're living in the midst of a war that's about territory and possession and all that stuff. It's about many things, but that's what it's about. I think the new moons tend to usher in stuff. So the new moon in the eclipse season, the new moon is very close to Uranus. And Uranus is like the Joker, it's like round and round she goes. Who knows where it's going to go? So it feels to me like we're stepping into the next iteration of all the things that have been accumulating that will affect our supplies.
Okay.
Right?
Because it's a new moon and it ushers things in.
Yeah, it's ushering. So for individuals, it's not that hard to grasp. It's a new moon conjunct Uranus. It's like, be open to the changes around you and, stand your ground, figure out what matters and what doesn't, and make your intentions towards what matters, For the world in general, it just feels, it's hard to get everyone on side with
with positive action. Yeah. And I guess everybody has different ideas about what matters.
Right, but it's one of those times to think local, to act locally.
Right.
It's one of those times to really, like deal with the terrain that you're actually inhabiting and do what you can to help support the changes that are inevitably coming. It's election season here in Ontario.
Should we do a special YouTube about no, it's not. No. You don't want to look at Doug Ford's chart? No.
He's a Scorpio.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Don't believe anything he says or does.
Okay. Fair enough.
No, for the first time, I think ever, I've never had a sign on my lawn because I just don't like to show my political, and I'm getting a sign for the NDP.
Right.
Nobody but me will notice that I've never done that before, but
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you do that usually when you look at elections? I know we did a US election one, but do you look at people?
I do. I mean, I certainly looked at the elections when Justin, called the election Trudeau. And I mean, I could, but I don't. There's a kind of exhaustion, I just want people to get out and vote.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do the right thing. I mean, there's no reason to reelect a government that has been so, I mean, this isn't about politics, what we're doing here, but since we are having an election and there is a new moon here and it is just starting up, right? They're just starting up. Figure out what matters to you.
Right.
I mean, there are other people who have other views, and I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, may the best person win. I'm fed up with Ford. I don't like him, but that's me personally. It's not me astrologically. Right. My ex-husband was a Scorpio, so don't listen to me.
Well, I think we all have a tendency to be signist. We have our
right.
We have our favorite signs and our not so favorite signs.
Right. So I don't mean to be an astro bigot, but but it seems to me that my astrological advice is, if it matters to you, do something. If it matters to you, then get out and do something about it.
Yeah.
It might not matter to you, it might be that you just want to get out into your garden. That's fine. Then do that.
Yeah.
It's about what matters to you, and the fact that with Uranus there's an unpredictability there. There's growth, there's change. It's not a square, it's a conjunction. Right. The full moon on May 16th is a square to Saturn.
Okay.
So that looks more, but it's also a trine to Neptune. So it's not just bad news. But
that reminds me of the last conversation we had about the full moon in Libra,
square Pluto,
where it was squaring Pluto but trining Saturn.
Yeah, right. So there's a little bit of good in yeah, exactly. So the square is frustrating.
Yes.
The square says, moon and sun square Saturn says, you got to deal with the stuff that's in front of you. You have to deal with reality.
Right.
So Saturn in Aquarius says, I know how to do this. I've got the plan. I've got the blueprint. And Taurus and Scorpio say, no, reality doesn't look like that. Right. But Saturn's, so that's the challenge. The challenge is the ideal. It could be this way, but the reality is different.
Right.
And so there's a challenge there. But the trine from Neptune is kind of nice. I mean, the trine from Neptune suggests that if we make connection to each other and to nature, then we can kind of, instead of Saturn being limiting, we could just have it be effort making.
Right.
Right. We could just make an effort to do something that involves connection.
Nice. Yeah. And I think we all need that. We all need connection. We've been out of connection for so long.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm not comfortable thinking about doing things. I'm just not used to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've heard a lot of people say that. Like, I just, after I've been out for, grocery shopping, I just want to go home.
Yeah. I have resistance that never was there before. On the other hand, I also miss people.
Yes. Yeah. Habit building. But yeah, connection sounds nice. And so wait, so that's the full moon is square Saturn and trine Neptune. That's the full moon on May 15th.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's even trining Mars.
Oh, okay.
Mars is conjunct Neptune and the moon. So there's energy there for connection.
Right.
Feeling, it's water, feeling connection.
Right.
but also collective connection, in the world. The thing that makes me nervous about the new moon is that Pluto is also making a station.
Okay.
Pluto is going direct, retrograde, sorry, on the 29th. And
That's tomorrow.
That's Friday. And it's the first planet to go retrograde since they all went direct in February.
Right.
Right. So it is a shift. And then Mercury will go retrograde, and then they'll all start, changing direction. So it's the first kind of
Pulling back.
energy that we're getting. And everything going direct was a nightmare, right? We stepped into a much more threatening world when everything finally went direct. It was very scary. Yeah.
So might be just everybody just stepping back, like you said, for a second and taking pause.
Right. So you got Pluto making a station retrograde, and you've got the new moon kind of saying, plant a seed, think of a new way to do this.
Right.
So it's not, Pluto, it's easy to get ominous about Pluto, but it's interesting because when you look at the Mercury retrograde that's coming between May 10th and June 3rd, when Mercury goes direct on June 3rd, there's a whole period in there where it's trining Pluto.
Okay. That's trining Pluto. That's good. I remember you said in your writing, it's like, well, with friends like these, who needs enemies?
Exactly.
But if it's a trine, we'll take it.
Well, it's a trine that as individuals, again, we could use it. We can incorporate it into our lives. I think that, in mythology, Mercury was the only one allowed into Pluto's realm.
Right. Which is the realm of the underworld, Hades.
Yeah, that's right. He's the, Mercury, they was allowed to go back and forth because Pluto's pretty secretive. So it'd be a good time to, I don't know, send messages, secret messages. But depending on where it is in your chart, it could be an excellent time for doing the work of inner and outer, with the work of dreams, or like something you have to go down for to come up and understand. So it could be amazing, so there's a lot to be freaked out about in terms of farming and tech, like agriculture and stuff like that. But there's a lot that's happening that's truly awesome.
Right.
Like there are people who really know how to make the earth come back and do and live again, right?
Right.
So Mercury trine Pluto at its best would be that, that kind of regenerative, regenerative agriculture.
Right. I love
it. There's a new documentary about something about the weeds. It's about Roundup.
Okay. Yeah.
Really interesting. Yes, very interesting. I heard
pesticide from Monsanto.
Napalm.
Not Monsanto anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. They had nothing. They didn't know what to do with the napalm, so they made Roundup. So you can't buy Roundup anymore if you're a person, but if you have a agri-farm, you can still use Roundup. Okay. It's very ugly. But
what's the name of the documentary?
Something about the weeds, wading into the weeds. It's about a class action suit or class action suits against Monsanto. And they're billing it as a David and Goliath story because they won. But the, it's horrendous. Roundup kills the microbiome of the earth.
Yeah.
And everybody has digestive problems. It's in the food, it's in the water, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
But there are just ready to go a lot of farming practices that can deal with not raising, with raising things without Roundup, and also probably transforming I don't know what it would be like to transform the farmland that's been rounduped, but it's there. It's actually there.
Yeah. And I mean, science is, even in universities and hospitals, they've actually started studying the microbiome. And so it's made it into the mainstream that it's an actual real thing, and it has to do with mental health. It has to do with the foundation of our health. So the fact that that's made it into the mainstream is also very hopeful.
It is hopeful, and it's hard to be hopeful when you just listen to the news.
Yes.
But when I see that Mercury trine Pluto, okay, I don't know. I suppose it could be about oil and Putin or something like that, but it's also about, at its best, it's about this kind of regenerative, because Pluto's job isn't to destroy. Pluto's job is to destroy and regenerate.
Yes, right.
And it's in an earth sign, and Mercury's in an earth sign. Mercury's quite close to Algol at that time. So it might be that, somebody's just had enough.
Right. You talked about the Algol, as we talked about in the last video, is the fixed star that is the Medusa, but is seen as the Medusa through the patriarchal lens.
Yeah, I think what Algol represents is the rage of nature, or people being enraged that we have destroyed nature so much.
Which would be valid for rage.
Even our own nature is so twisted out of shape. It's hard,
Yeah.
when you think of the kids, and how hard it is for the kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there could be some regeneration around that.
That's what I'm going to look for in my own life.
Okay.
Is regenerative practices, according to my chart, right? This planet is in this house and that planet is in that house. But yeah, if you didn't know your chart, you could just look for what's potentially regenerative in your own life.
Right.
And you may, it may be psychological, right? It may be about diving deep into your ancestral patterns and what is that? I mean, we're also disconnected, from those kinds of things.
And very much like the microbiome that's made it into the mainstream, I hear more and more people talking about psychological healing and health in a way that's more common, where you would never have heard that 5 years ago, even 5 years ago. People being more willing to welcome their repressed feelings, more willing to welcome their ancestral heritage to the consciousness for healing. So some of these things that were relegated sort of to the alternative world are starting to make their way in. And so when the collective consciousness got it in their consciousness, there's more hope for it to be really accepted.
Change always comes from the margins. Change that's worth anything always comes from the margins. Yeah.
That's where I usually hang out.
I've been spending my whole life there. My time has come.
Yeah. Okay, so that's very helpful. The Mercury retrogrades in Taurus.
No, Mercury goes retrograde in Gemini.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it goes direct in Taurus.
I see. On June 3rd.
It's it goes back into Taurus. So it's retrograde on May 10th. And then it retrogrades back at 4 degrees of Gemini. And then it goes back into Taurus on May 22nd. So you could say from May 22nd, when it goes back into Taurus, until June 13th, when it goes back into Gemini, it's kind of trining Pluto.
Okay. So look for the regenerative parts of your life in that time frame. Yeah. Okay.
And change, it's just like getting born. It's scary, it hurts, there's no guarantee. It's contractions, right? But it's, by the time you're that pregnant, you don't have a choice.
It's just like, make this be over.
Yeah, you just have to
Let's
go
just
with
get
it.
on with this. Just get this baby out.
And all of us who are participating in this, anybody who's watching this, or anybody who, or you and me, we all made it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just wonder because maybe you can shed light on this, because for me, I mean, Pluto seemed like such a large part of this transformational piece that we've all been in for the last 2 years, with it in Capricorn, going through
Not longer than that, but yes.
Oh yeah, so all the way back to 2008, but then when things got really intense in 2020,
Absolutely.
in May, Pluto seemed to be one of the main
players.
characters in this drama. And then just right through, like, it just feels like it's been so Plutonian these last 2 years, and it just feels like it's just keep on keeping on with the Pluto.
It's very Plutonian because it's a way of life that's dying.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It has to die. The way we've lived has to die. And it's up to us to do that.
Yeah.
People are like, yes, I understand about change, but don't make me change.
Right, exactly. And yeah, Pluto, when you understand sort of the archetype of what the planet is, it helps you to have a framework for it, which helped me with the Plutonianness of that I went through. But you really get the feeling that Pluto is when it's really personal and up close. Like, it's like, no,
it carries you into the underworld. It carries you down.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that there's other archetypes.
Like Saturn.
It's not just all death. It's not just all the end. There's other.
And Pluto is not just death. Pluto, I have this, bee in my bonnet about the fact that Pluto is not a god. It's the queen. It's the goddess of the underworld. She's there at the beginning and she's there at the end. That's Pluto.
Yeah.
She's with us from the minute we start, and she's with us at the end when we go back to the earth.
Right.
If you make Pluto a feminine principle, it seems way less diabolical and way more organic.
Yeah, like in terms of Kali, like
in terms of
Kali, the goddess of
Kali,
yeah, destruction and rebirth. Yeah.
Yeah, dripping blood, sure. One of my favorite underworld woman images is Mercy.
Mercy. Okay.
Mercy. I think Pluto at its best is merciful. And the inevitability of change is a mercy if we allow it.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's hard to grasp. Mercy is, I think, an interesting and difficult concept, actually.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's that feeling that somehow you're being witnessed and what's happening is the right thing, but you never would have gone there.
Yeah. And so it's like the mercy of help of we're not inclined to let go naturally of things that we think are keeping us alive, no matter how unhealthy they might be, or so the mercy of helping us to let go. I get that. Yeah.
So it's all there. It's all there.
And in the middle of the Mercury retrograde, while that's happening, hopefully it's merciful. That when it stations on June 3rd, the same day Jupiter is leaving Pisces and going into Aries. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And as Jupiter does that, it's making a semi-square to Uranus.
That sounds interesting. It sounds like go, but don't go because of the retrograde. I don't know.
Well, for those of us with a little more advanced knowledge, all along, Uranus went into Taurus in 2018 in May, and Mars was in Aquarius. Like Mars and Uranus squared each other was quite, so it was the beginning of what I consider to be the trade wars.
Okay.
But all along through these times, there have been these semi-squares happening. So Neptune was semi-square. Anyway, I think Neptune and Uranus were semi-square there for a while. Anyway, so the semi-squares are tensions that don't release very easily. So Jupiter goes into Aries, and it's full of, Aries is a sign that says, okay, enough of this, let's just move on.
Yeah.
And certainly Jupiter in Pisces has been a collective awareness of suffering that's really hard to bear. It's hard for a lot of people to just hold the intensity of how much suffering is going on. So the semi-square to Uranus, it has Jupiter in Aries semi-square Uranus with Mercury retrograde, stationary retrograde, feels to me like it has a feeling that I've had enough of this, but I can't really do anything just yet.
Right. So there's just that sort of building energy towards the frustration of change.
But one of the things that's happening is that Mercury is sextiling Jupiter in its retrograde, because Mercury goes retrograde at 4 degrees of Gemini, and Jupiter is going to be at 0 degrees of Aries. So Mercury will retrograde back to sextile Jupiter. I must have that date here. Mercury, on May 19th. So actually that says something's going on. I think between Pluto retrograde and Mercury retrograde sextiling Jupiter, something's going on that can actually bring change.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. No, I meant to ask you, because certain planets have certain relationships to the signs that they're in. When Saturn is in Capricorn, that's a good placement. When Jupiter's in Pisces, that's a good placement. How do Jupiter and Aries get along? Are they friends?
There's no special dignity or indignity with Jupiter and Aries, but Jupiter's a big ball of fire, and Aries is a fire sign. So
right. So that's what I was thinking. They would get along, but maybe they're
it's a good place for Jupiter, but Jupiter can be very manic.
Right. Like too much fire.
I'm nervous because Aries is a war sign.
Yeah.
And Jupiter is like the holy war sign.
Right.
So I'm glad that Mercury's retrograde on the day that Jupiter goes into Aries, because maybe it'll hold back from more violence.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Okay, I think that's enough to reflect on.
It's too much to reflect on, to be honest.
I think it's amazing how your brain can hold all these aspects. And
well, I mean, I'm not trying to be a predictor. I'm only trying to help us navigate these things for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I don't like when my predictions come true. I don't necessarily see a glass half full.
Right.
All the time.
Yeah. Right. And so it's being able to, and sometimes I find predictions sometimes aren't actually that helpful, because you have the outcome, but you don't have the process to get you there. And I find like you take us through the process, which is more important.
Yeah, and that's what I think is, and if you're the one who's caught in a flood or forest fire, then no matter what the aspect is, it's not that great.
Right. Yeah.
Or a war, right? I mean, think of all the people in the Ukraine who have trines happening in their charts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it defies us to make I think we have to harness the energy for ourselves and do what we can with it right where we're standing.
Right. I think that's the best use as well. Okay, well, thank you for that. And hopefully that helps anybody that's listening, and hopefully they glean some navigation tools with it. And
if you want to comment, if you want to let us know what you're experiencing or what you're thinking or what you're concerned about, I think you can comment in the YouTube and we'll respond to you.
Yeah, leave a comment. And if there's anything you want Julie to cover in the next video, or if there's anything you want her to explain more, if we can, definitely we can approach that. If you leave a comment, it helps us to, make content that is relevant and that people like. And if you hit the subscribe button, that helps us too. So please press like and subscribe and leave a comment if you want to. Yeah. Okay, Julie, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, take care.